Good morning, everyone. Today we'll see about the osteology of clavicle. So first we will see about the introduction. Clavicle is also known as collarbone or beauty bone, and it lies horizontally in front of the root of the neck. So the peculiarities of clavicle: it's the only long bone that lies horizontally, and it is subcutaneous throughout. It has no medullary cavity. It ossifies in membrane. It's the only long bone that has two primary centers. It's the first bone to ossify at 5 to 6 weeks of intrauterine life. It transmits the whole weight of the upper limb to the trunk. So these are the peculiarities of clavicle. So then we'll see about the parts. It has a cylindrical part known as shaft, and it has two ends. One end is medial end and another end is lateral end. So the medial end is also known as sternal end, and the lateral end is also known as acromial end. And in this picture we can see the medial sternal end, lateral acromial end, and in the inferior aspect there is a tubercle called conoid tubercle and a trapezoid ridge impression which is present in the medial aspect. It's for the costoclavicular ligament attachment. So next we'll see about that side determination. How will you identify the side, whether it is right or left? So the first point to identify the side is it has a flattened acromial end that lies laterally, and rounded sternal end lies medially. So middle third of the inferior surface is grooved, and it's known as subclavian groove. So the shaft is concave forwards in its medial two-third and convex forwards in its medial two-third and concave forwards in its lateral one-third. So we'll see about it in detail about the shaft. So the shaft is divided into medial two-third and lateral one-third portion. So the lateral one-third of the shaft has two borders and two surfaces. So the two borders are anterior and posterior border. And anterior border is concave forwards, and it bears a tubercle called deltoid tubercle, which gives attachment to the deltoid muscle. And the posterior border is convex backwards, and lateral one-third has two surfaces. One is superior and another one is inferior. So the superior surface is subcutaneous, and the inferior surface bears the conoid tubercle and the trapezoid ridge, which gives attachment to the coracoclavicular ligament, and which contains two parts. One is conoid part and another one is trapezoid part. So these two parts gets attached with the respective areas. So the medial two-third of the clavicle, which is cylindrical or rounded in shape, and it has four surfaces. So the four surfaces are anterior, posterior, superior and inferior. So the anterior surface is convex forwards, posterior surface is smooth, superior surface is rough in its medial part and smooth in its lateral part. So the inferior surface, it has a rough oval impression medially, and subclavian groove which is present in the middle one-third, and lateral to the subclavian groove there is a nutrient foramen. Next we will see about the ends. So the ends are acromial end and medial end or sternal end. So the acromial end is flattened from above downwards. It bears a small facet which articulates with the acromion process of scapula to form the acromioclavicular joint. So the medial end is quadrangular and expanded, and it articulates with the clavicular notch of manubrium sterni to form the sternoclavicular joint. So the attachments of clavicle. So joint capsular ligament is attached around the margins of the articular surfaces on both the ends, and interclavicular ligament is attached superiorly on the medial end, and the lateral one-third gives attachment to the deltoid, trapezius and coracoclavicular ligament. Deltoid arises from the anterior border, trapezius gets inserted into the posterior border, and the coracoclavicular ligament to the conoid tubercle and trapezoid ridge. Next we'll see about the attachments in the medial two-third. So the pectoralis major arises from the anterior surface, sternocleidomastoid arises from the superior surface, costoclavicular ligament is attached to the oval impression which is present in the inferior surface, subclavius muscle is inserted into the subclavian groove, And the margins of the subclavian groove is attached with the clavipectoral fascia. The sternohyoid arises from the posterior surface. So these are the attachments. And finally, we'll see about the applied anatomy. So the common fracture site is the junction between the two curvatures, and that is a weak point of clavicle. And one more condition known as cleidocraniodyssostasis, and that is congenital absence of clavicle. So these are all the osteology of clavicle. Thank you.